Have you ever lain awake during a relentless downpour, the rain hammering against your window like insistent fingers, wondering if the storm outside is masking something far more sinister lurking in the shadows? This account comes from a young woman who shared her ordeal on an online forum, detailing a night that began with the simple comfort of solitude, but spiraled into unrelenting terror. I was home alone that evening, my parents away for a weekend getaway, and the rain had been falling steadily since dusk, turning the world outside into a blurred, gray haze. The house, an old Victorian on the edge of town, always creaked more during storms, the wind whistling through cracks like distant whispers. I'd curled up on the couch with a book, the sound of rain on the roof lulling me into a false sense of security. Around midnight, the power flickered once, twice, then went out completely, plunging everything into darkness broken only by the occasional flash of lightning. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom, casting long, twisting shadows on the walls. That's when I heard it, the first soft knock at the front door, barely audible over the thunder. My heart skipped. Who would be out in this deluge? I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole, but the porch was empty, rain sluicing off the eaves in sheets, shrugging it off as a branch or debris. I turned away, but the knock came again, sharper this time, insistent. The air grew colder, a chill seeping through the floorboards, as if the storm had breached the house. I called out, "Who's there?" But only the rain answered. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the window, a pale face pressed against the glass, eyes wide and unblinking, water streaming down like tears. I screamed, dropping my phone, the light spinning wildly. When I retrieved it, the face was gone, but the knocking persisted. Now from the back door, then the side window, circling the house like a predator testing defenses. Panic set in, I barricaded myself in the upstairs bedroom, dialing emergency services, but the line crackled with static, the operator's voice drowned by the storm. Hours passed in agonizing tension, the knocks growing fainter but never ceasing, each one echoing my racing pulse. When dawn finally broke and the rain eased, I ventured out, finding no footprints, no signs of intrusion, only a single, sodden note wedged under the door. I just wanted to come in from the rain. The police dismissed it as a prank, but weeks later, I learned a drifter had been spotted in the area, known for targeting isolated homes during storms, vanishing without a trace. To this day, when rain falls, I bolt every door and wonder if he's still out there, waiting for the next downpour. Another chilling tale was recounted by a man in his 30s on a Reddit thread dedicated to unexplained encounters, where he described a drive home that turned a familiar route into a nightmare of pursuit and paranoia. I'd been working late at the office, the kind of overtime that leaves you bleary-eyed and desperate for bed, when the skies opened up just as I hit the highway. The rain came down in torrents, visibility dropping to near zero, my wipers struggling against the onslaught. The road was deserted, a winding two-lane blacktop flanked by dense woods, the kind where light barely penetrates, even on clear days. Lightning illuminated the trees in stark flashes, making them look like skeletal figures reaching out. About halfway home, I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror, distant at first, but gaining steadily. I sped up, assuming it was someone in a hurry, but the lights matched my pace, closing the gap inch by inch. The radio hissed with interference, static bursting with each thunderclap, and I switched it off, the silence amplifying the drum of rain on the roof. The pursuing car drew closer, its high beams blinding me in the mirror, forcing me to squint. I pulled over to let them pass, my tires crunching on the gravel shoulder, but they stopped too, idling behind me, engine rumbling like a growl. Fear knotted my stomach. I locked the doors, gripping the wheel, waiting. Minutes stretched into eternity, the rain a relentless roar, until finally they inched forward, pulling alongside. Through the blurred window, I glimpsed the driver, a shadowy figure, face obscured by a hood, staring straight at me with an intensity that sent ice through my veins. They lingered for what felt like forever, then accelerated away, vanishing into the storm. Shaken, I resumed driving, but miles later, the headlights reappeared, this time flashing erratically, as if signaling. Panic surged. I floored the gas, the car hydroplaning on slick pavement, trees blurring by. My phone had no signal, the storm isolating me completely. When I finally reached town, the lights disappeared, but the terror didn't. The next day, news reports mentioned a string of carjackings along that route, perpetrators using storms to mask their approaches, preying on lone drivers. But the twist that haunts me. Police found an abandoned vehicle matching the description, empty except for a soaked map, circled around my neighborhood. They'd been following me home all along. This next experience was shared anonymously on a podcast forum where listeners submit their brushes with the supernatural. And it unfolds like a classic ghost story, but with a modern edge that makes it all too believable. I was house-sitting for friends in a rural cabin, the perfect escape from city life, but that night, a thunderstorm rolled in unexpectedly, transforming the idyllic setting into something oppressive and foreboding. The rain lashed the windows, wind howling through the pines like mournful cries, and the power cut out early, leaving me with only a flickering lantern for company. The cabin was remote, no neighbors for miles, the kind of place where sounds carry strangely in the wet air. I settled in with a book, trying to ignore the isolation, but around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps on the porch, slow, deliberate, squelching in the mud. My dog, usually a lazy lump, bolted upright, growling low, hackles raised. I froze, listening as the steps circled the house, pausing at each window, as if someone or something was peering in. Lightning revealed nothing but sheets of rain, yet the footsteps continued, now accompanied by a faint scratching, like nails on wood. Heart pounding, I grabbed a flashlight and shone it out, the beam piercing the darkness. But it caught only glimpses of movement, a shadow darting away, too quick to identify. The dog whimpered, backing into a corner, and the air grew heavy with a musty, decayed scent that seeped through the cracks. Terror built as the scratching intensified, now at the door, rhythmic and persistent, like a code I couldn't decipher. I barricaded myself in the bedroom, phone useless without signal, praying for morning. As the storm peaked, a whisper joined the cacophony, my name, repeated softly, carried on the wind. When daylight came and the rain tapered, I ventured out, finding muddy prints around the cabin, human-sized but elongated, trailing off into the woods. Locals later told me the property was built on old burial grounds, disturbed by floods years ago, and during heavy rains, the restless dead were said to wander, seeking shelter. But the revelation that shattered me. Among the prints was a faded photograph, waterlogged and old, showing a figure that looked eerily like me, dated to a century ago. Perhaps I wasn't the first to house it, and the whispers weren't calling for entry, but recognizing a reincarnation they claimed as their own. The storm had subsided by morning, but the unease lingered. A reminder that rainy nights can unearth secrets better left buried. Another submission came from a teenager who posted about an encounter that blurred the line between coincidence and curse, shared on a true crime subreddit. I was 16, left alone while my family visited relatives, the rain starting as a drizzle, but escalating into a full-blown tempest by evening, flooding the streets and turning our suburban neighborhood into an isolated island. Bored, I decided to video chat with friends. The connection glitchy from the weather, but we laughed about old ghost stories. Midway through, my screen froze. Then a new face appeared in the call, a stranger, pale and dripping wet, staring silently. I thought it was a hack or prank, muting them, but they unmuted, whispering, "Let me in, it's raining." My blood ran cold, the voice was distorted, echoing with the thunder outside. I ended the call, but my phone rang immediately, unknown number, the same voice pleading, "I'm outside your door." Peering out, I saw a figure standing in the driveway, hood up, rain cascading off them like a shroud. They didn't move, just stood there, lightning silhouetting their form. Terror gripped me. I dialed my parents, but the line was dead, power surging with each bolt. The figure approached slowly, knocking softly, the sound muffled by the downpour. I hid upstairs, lights off, heart thundering louder than the storm. Hours later, the knocking stopped, and when my family returned the next day, they found no evidence except a wet handprint on the window inside the house. Police chalked it up to a vagrant, but the twist, weeks later, I discovered an old news clipping in the attic about a drowning in our backyard pond during a similar storm decades ago. The victim, a teen who'd begged neighbors for shelter, only to be turned away. The photo matched the figure I'd seen and the whispers. They were the last words recorded before they perished. Shifting to a tale that involves familial bonds twisted by the elements, this one was detailed by a user in a paranormal experiences thread, building a sense of dread that culminates in a familial horror. I lived with my grandmother in her creaky farmhouse, and on rainy nights, she'd tell stories of her youth. But one storm changed everything. The rain pounded the tin roof like gunfire, wind rattling the shutters, and Grandma had gone to bed early, leaving me to watch TV in the living room. Around midnight, I heard her voice calling from upstairs, frail and urgent, "Come quick, child, the water's rising," assuming a leak. I grabbed a bucket and ascended the dark stairs, flashlight in hand, the air thick with ozone from the lightning. Her room was empty, bed made, but the voice called again from the attic. "Up here, it's flooding." The attic door, usually locked, creaked open, rain dripping from the ceiling. Climbing the ladder, I found the space pitch black, water pooling on the floor from a roof breach. Grandma's voice echoed, "Closer, dear," but as lightning flashed, I saw no one, just old trunks and shadows. The voice shifted, now behind me, whispering, "I've been waiting in the rain." Spinning, I faced a figure in the corner, drenched and decayed, resembling Grandma but wrong, eyes hollow. I fled, slipping on wet steps, crashing down as the house shook with thunder. Downstairs, I found the real Grandma asleep in her chair, untouched by the storm. The attic, dry as bone, no leak. The shocking truth emerged from family albums. Grandma had a twin sister who drowned in a flood as a child. Calling for help in vain, her body never found. On rainy nights, she returns, mistaking descendants for saviors, pulling them into the shadows where she waits eternally. These narratives weave a web of isolation, amplified by the relentless patter of rain. But one final account ties them together in an unexpected way, submitted by someone who connected dots across multiple forums. I was researching old weather anomalies for a blog when I stumbled upon patterns in rainy night incidents, but my own experience sealed the horror. During a torrential downpour, I was alone in my apartment, the city lights smeared by water on the windows, when a knock echoed at my door, 3 sharp raps, then silence. Peering through the spy hole, I saw a soaked delivery person holding a package, but I hadn't ordered anything. Cautiously opening, they handed it over without a word, vanishing into the storm. Inside was a journal, pages filled with entries mirroring the stories I'd read: the knocking drifter, the pursuing car, the wandering spirit, all dated to the same stormy nights over years. The last entry was mine, describing this very moment, penned in my handwriting. But I hadn't written it. As rain intensified, the journal's ink ran, revealing hidden text. The storm brings them back, and now you're part of the cycle. The twist that unraveled my sanity. The journal belonged to my long-lost sibling. Disappeared during a flood, their final note warning that sharing these tales summons the entities anew, binding the teller forever. Now, as I recount this, the rain starts again outside. Do you hear the knocking?